Some silences cut deeper than any scream could ever reach. I lay on that freezing gurney with my body shattered and my spirit crushed even worse. The fluorescent lights of the emergency room buzzed and flickered overhead, while I listened to the surgeon speaking urgently into his phone. His tone was measured, professional, yet edged with desperation. "Mr. Ethan Castellano, this is Dr. Richard Foster from Memorial Grace Hospital. Your mother, Margaret Castellano, has been involved in a severe automobile collision. We require your immediate authorization to proceed with emergency surgical intervention. This is genuinely a matter of life and death." Silence stretched across the line. Then came my son's voice, crystal clear and icy cold, as if he were declining a telemarketer's pitch. "Doctor, I'm currently at my wife's mother's birthday celebration. If my mother passes away, please inform me afterward. I'll deal with it tomorrow." The surgeon froze mid-gesture. So did I. It wasn't the agony from my fractured ribs that forced my eyes shut. It was hearing those merciless words escape from the mouth of the child I had carried for 9 months, the infant I had nursed through endless sleepless nights, the boy I had comforted every time fear consumed him. "If she dies, let me know later." As if I were nothing more than a pending invoice, a notification that could wait, a problem to address when convenient. "My name is Margaret Castellano. I am 59 years old. And that evening, lying on that cold stretcher while medical staff scrambled to preserve my life, I understood something no mother should ever have to comprehend. Raising a child offers no guarantee that he will see you as fully human. But there was something my son Ethan didn't know that night. Something nobody in that emergency department knew except the doctor who held my trembling hand, while they wheeled me toward the operating theater. I wasn't merely an abandoned mother in a hospital corridor. I was the owner of that entire hospital, and when I regained consciousness hours later, my body held together with surgical staples and my soul split cleanly in two. Dr. Foster leaned close and whispered something that forced my eyes to truly open. "Your son has no idea who you really are. Does he, Mrs. Castellano?" I managed the faintest smile through my pain, because in that crystalline moment, I knew with absolute certainty that everything was about to transform. But to explain how I arrived at this devastating crossroads, I must return to the beginning, to those days when everything appeared flawless, when I genuinely believed a mother's unconditional love could triumph over any obstacle. How profoundly mistaken I was. Sometimes we place our trust in people who deserve none of it. Have you experienced that crushing disappointment from someone you cherished? Share your story in the comments below. I genuinely want to hear it. Let me transport you back to a time when my mornings smelled of freshly brewed coffee and gardenias blooming in our garden. 25 years ago, when Ethan was merely 5 years old. I would rise every morning at 6 o'clock. Not because obligation demanded it, but because I treasured those precious moments of stillness before the household stirred to life. I would settle onto the back veranda of our Highland Estates home, cradling my white porcelain cup in both hands, watching the sunrise transform the climbing ivy on our stone walls to molten gold. My husband Richard was still sleeping during those sacred hours. He maintained late nights at his prestigious corporate law practice, while I managed the considerable family fortune I had inherited from my father. Father had been a physician, a brilliantly visionary man who established Memorial Grace Hospital when I was only 12 years old. He started with 25 beds and an ambitious dream: exceptional medical care for families who demanded the finest treatment available. When he passed away, I was 28 and had just given birth to Ethan. Father bequeathed me everything: the hospital, the commercial properties, the diversified investment portfolio. My older brother, Augustus, received only a modest portion. Father had been unambiguous in his last will and testament. "Margaret possesses my vision. She will understand how to expand what I have built." Augustus never forgave me for that inheritance. But that's an entirely different story. I devoted myself to raising Ethan while managing the hospital from behind the scenes. I recruited the most accomplished administrators. We modernized every operating suite. We attracted specialists from Boston and San Francisco. Memorial Grace Hospital evolved into a national benchmark for excellence. Yet nobody knew I orchestrated it all. I was simply Mrs. Castellano, the wife of attorney Richard, the devoted mother who transported her son to swimming instruction on Tuesdays and Thursdays, the woman who organized the annual Christmas charity galas and baked pumpkin pies every October. Richard had insisted upon this arrangement from the very beginning of our marriage. Margaret, a woman of your social standing shouldn't be flaunting business ownership. Allow your husband to maintain the public presence. You're far too valuable to expose yourself to scrutiny and criticism. I acquiesced because I loved him deeply, because I believed protecting my family mattered more than any public recognition or acknowledgement. Ethan grew up surrounded by luxuries he assumed originated from his father's legal career. The 4-story house, the summer vacations in Martha's Vineyard, his exclusive Swiss boarding school education, the Mercedes sedan we presented him when he turned 18. I never revealed the truth. I never disclosed that every single dollar financing his privileged education came from my inheritance, from my discreet management, from my financial decisions that had multiplied our family assets 5-fold across 2 decades. I simply wanted him to experience happiness. I didn't want him burdened with the knowledge that his mother was far more than a homemaker. I wanted him to simply enjoy being my beloved son. I vividly remember one particular Sunday afternoon. Ethan was perhaps 7 years old. We were in our garden, and he was chasing golden butterflies among the rose bushes. He stumbled and scraped his knee badly. He came running to me, sobbing, those enormous brown eyes brimming with tears. I embraced him. I cleaned the wound gently. I kissed his forehead with infinite tenderness. Mother will always take care of you, sweetheart. Always, regardless of what happens. He squeezed me so tightly I could feel his small heartbeat against my chest. I love you, Mommy. You're the most wonderful mom in the entire world. I preserved that moment like one safeguards a precious jewel. I truly believed it would last forever. The years flowed past like changing seasons. Ethan matured. He transformed into a teenager, then a young adult. He studied business administration at a prestigious East Coast university. He met Victoria when he was 23. She was undeniably beautiful, blonde, slender. One of those women who instinctively know how to smile at precisely the right moment. She came from a wealthy family, though not quite as wealthy as ours. Her father owned a regional restaurant chain. From our very first meeting, I sensed something troubling. It wasn't jealousy. It was maternal intuition. The way Victoria observed me when I spoke, as if she were evaluating me, as if I represented an obstacle she needed to circumvent to reach something more valuable. Mrs. Castellano, what an absolutely exquisite home you have. She told me the first evening she joined us for dinner. Her voice was honeyed, but her eyes scanned every painting, every piece of furniture, every architectural detail, as if she were conducting an inventory assessment. Thank you, Victoria. We've been tremendously happy here, I replied, pouring her additional iced tea. Ethan was completely infatuated. He gazed at her as if she were the only woman who had ever existed. Richard, my husband, was thoroughly delighted. Finally, Ethan has found a woman from a respectable family, not like those inappropriate girls he brought home previously. I remained silent. I always remained silent when Richard spoke that way. Victoria began visiting more frequently. Always gracious. Always impeccably correct. But I noticed subtle things. How she would redirect the conversation whenever I mentioned my volunteer work with charitable foundations. How she would change the subject if I discussed my economics degree. How she would gently suggest to Ethan that they spend Sundays with her family instead of with me. It's just that my mother misses Ethan terribly, Mrs. Castellano. You understand, don't you? A mother always desires her children close by. She would smile warmly. I would smile back. But internally, something fundamental began fracturing. One afternoon, I discovered Ethan in our living room, staring at his phone with a troubled expression. Is everything all right, sweetheart? He glanced up. For one fleeting second, I glimpsed the boy who chased butterflies, but then his expression transformed. Mom, Victoria and I are planning to marry next year. My heart stuttered, not with joy but with profound dread. That's wonderful, darling. I'm genuinely pleased for you. I lied. For the first time in my entire life, I lied to my son about my true feelings, because a good mother shouldn't be selfish. A good mother should feel happiness when her son discovers love. Correct? That night, while Richard slumbered beside me, snoring softly, I remained awake, staring at the ceiling in darkness. For the first time in 25 years, I sensed that something irreversible was about to shift. Something I couldn't control, something that would ultimately cost me far more than I could possibly imagine. But I still didn't understand what it was. I still believed a mother's love would be sufficient to hold everything together. How innocent the first was. While I share all of this, I wonder where you might be listening. Write your city's name in the comments section. There are fractures invisible to the naked eye, like those hairline cracks in fine china that you only detect when you hold the cup toward the light. That's precisely how my relationship with Ethan began its slow disintegration. So gradually, so subtly that initially I convinced myself it was merely my imagination. The wedding took place in the gardens of a prestigious vineyard in Sonoma Valley. 300 guests, white flowers everywhere, a live orchestra at sunset. I paid for everything naturally, $200,000 withdrawn from my personal account. Yet Ethan and Victoria expressed gratitude as if it had been a joint contribution from Richard and me. Richard signed the checks. I transferred the funds. Nobody questioned where the money truly originated. I remember the precise moment Ethan and Victoria exchanged their vows. The sun was descending behind the mountains, painting everything in shades of amber and rose. My son looked extraordinarily handsome in his charcoal gray suit, so radiantly happy that tears streamed down my face. All mothers cry at their children's weddings, but my tears weren't purely from joy. They were a farewell, because something deep within me understood I was losing my son in a way I could never recover. Victoria looked absolutely radiant in her imported French lace gown. As she passed me on her way to the altar, she grasped my hand and whispered close to my ear, "Thank you for everything, Mother Castellano. I'm going to take exceptional care of Ethan." Mother Castellano. Not Mrs. Castellano, not Margaret, Mother Castellano. As if I were no longer a complete individual, merely a role, a designation, the groom's mother. I smiled graciously. I squeezed her hand in return. "I know you will, dear." Another lie. Following the wedding, the newlyweds relocated to a downtown condominium that I helped them furnish. Well, helped is an understatement. I provided the down payment. I purchased the furniture. I paid for the German designer kitchen Victoria had selected. "It's simply that we're just starting out, Mrs. Castellano," Victoria explained one afternoon while we shared coffee in my sitting room. "Ethan has only been with his father's firm for 2 years. We don't yet earn enough to afford these luxuries ourselves. But you understand how society functions, correct? One must maintain proper appearances." Maintain appearances. I provided the money without the slightest protest. During the initial months following their wedding, Ethan still visited me on Sundays. He would arrive alone without Victoria, and we would share lunch together on the veranda just as we had when he was young. "Where's Victoria?" I would inquire while serving him pot roast, his absolute favorite dish. "She's with her mother. You know how women are, they require their time together." I would nod understandingly. I would serve more rice. But gradually, the visits became increasingly infrequent. First every 2 weeks, then monthly, then only on special occasions. "Mom, we're incredibly busy with work and the new condominium." "Mom, Victoria isn't feeling well. I think she ate something that disagreed with her." "Mom, we have dinner plans with Victoria's parents. You understand, we need to strengthen family connections." Every excuse sounded reasonable. Every justification made logical sense. But the emptiness expanded steadily. One Thursday afternoon, I decided to visit unexpectedly. I was carrying a container filled with pulled pork I had prepared specifically for Ethan. I knew it was his favorite dish, the one that reminded him of family vacations during his childhood. I rang their doorbell 3 times. I heard footsteps inside, voices, laughter. Victoria opened the door. Her smile froze instantly when she saw me standing there. "Mrs. Castellano." What an unexpected surprise. She didn't say "what a pleasure" or "what joy." She said "what a surprise," with the exact tone someone might use discovering a cockroach in their kitchen. "Hello, dear. I was passing through the neighborhood and brought you some pork. I know Ethan absolutely loves it." She positioned herself firmly in the doorframe, making no gesture to invite me inside. "Oh, Mrs. Castellano. What unfortunate timing. We currently have visitors, Ethan's parents." "Well, my parents are here enjoying dinner with us." Ethan's parents. I was Ethan's mother, yet she referred to her own parents as Ethan's parents, as if they constituted the genuine family. as if I were merely a stranger. I understand completely, I said, extending the container toward her. Just give this to Ethan when you have a moment. Certainly. She accepted the container as if I were handing her something contaminated. Absolutely. Thank you. Ethan will definitely call you later. She closed the door. I stood there alone in that impersonal hallway, the echo of that door closing reverberating in my ears. I returned to my car. I sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. I retrieved my phone and dialed Ethan's number. Voicemail. I dialed again. Voicemail. I waited 15 minutes, then 30, then an entire hour. He never called back. That evening, Richard arrived home late as always. I was in the kitchen preparing chamomile tea I had no intention of drinking. What's wrong with you, Margaret? You look like you've just attended a funeral. Nothing serious. I just miss Ethan terribly. Richard sighed heavily, loosening his silk tie. Oh, woman. Ethan is a married man now. He has his own life to live. You can't remain attached to him as if he were still a child. That's not healthy behavior. He kissed me on the forehead. A mechanical kiss utterly devoid of feeling. You should find yourself a hobby. Something to occupy your mind. I don't know, perhaps yoga classes or join a book discussion group. He ascended the stairs toward our bedroom. I remained there with my cold tea and my heart even colder. A hobby. I managed a hospital. I supervised multimillion-dollar investments. I made decisions affecting hundreds of employees and thousands of patients. But to my husband, I was simply a bored woman requiring distraction because her son no longer visited regularly. The months continued passing. Ethan's phone calls became briefer, more sporadic. Hi, Mom. Yes, everything's fine here. Busy schedule. I'll call you later. Click. On my 57th birthday, I waited the entire day for Ethan to visit. He finally arrived at 8 o'clock in the evening with Victoria. They brought a cake from the grocery store, one of those generic pre-decorated ones. Happy birthday, Mom, Ethan said, giving me a perfunctory hug. Congratulations, Mother Castellano, Victoria said, kissing the air beside my cheek. They remained for 30 minutes. They ate cake. Victoria checked her phone 3 separate times. Darling, it's getting late. We agreed to have dinner with my parents at 9. Ethan glanced at his watch. That's correct. Sorry, Mom, but we really must leave. Can't you stay just a bit longer? I asked, despising the pleading tone that had crept into my voice. We already made firm plans, Mom, but this was lovely. Happy birthday. They departed. I sat alone in my dining room with half a cake remaining on the table and the birthday candles extinguished. Richard hadn't even descended from upstairs. He was sequestered in his study on a video conference call. I wept that night, wept as I hadn't wept since my father's death, because I finally understood something terrible. I had raised a son for the world, and now the world was taking him from me. Little by little, visit by visit, excuse after excuse. And I had absolutely no idea how to prevent it. 2 months later, Victoria announced she was pregnant. I should have been overjoyed. I was going to become a grandmother. But when Ethan delivered the news over the phone, his first words were devastating. Mom, Victoria's mother, is going to stay with us the first 3 months to help with the baby. You understand? She has more recent experience with small children. More experience. I had raised Ethan single-handedly while managing a medical empire, but Victoria's mother, who employed a maid for everything, supposedly had more experience. Of course, son. Whatever you need. I disconnected the call, and for the first time, I allowed a dark thought to penetrate my consciousness. At what precise moment did I become invisible to my own son? At what point did I stop being Margaret Castellano, the woman who built everything, and become merely Mom? A mom who's in the way, who's superfluous, who needs to find a hobby. I didn't realize it then, but I was about to discover the answer in the cruelest way imaginable. Because invisible cracks, when they finally break completely, destroy absolutely everything. Will Margaret ever reclaim her identity? Or has she lost her son forever? The truth is more devastating than you can imagine. Don't miss part 2, where Margaret's world crumbles completely, and she makes a discovery that changes everything. Subscribe now so you don't miss what happens next. There are things a mother prefers not to acknowledge. Like when your 3-year-old conceals a broken toy behind the furniture, And you pretend not to notice because you want to believe it was an accident, not deliberate deception. That's precisely how I began existing, pretending not to see what was directly before my eyes. When my grandson Samuel was born, I found myself in the waiting area of Memorial Grace Hospital, my own hospital, though Ethan remained completely unaware of this fact. Ironic, isn't it? Victoria had insisted on delivering there, because it was renowned as the finest private hospital in the entire city. I personally approved the salary of the obstetrician who attended her delivery. I had authorized the renovation of the maternity suites 5 years prior. Yet I occupied that waiting room simply as a grandmother. Nothing more, nothing less. Ethan emerged from the delivery room with eyes shining brilliantly, his shirt wrinkled, wearing that radiant smile I hadn't witnessed on his face since childhood. Mom, it's a boy. We've named him Samuel. He weighs 7 pounds 4 ounces. He's absolutely perfect. I embraced him tightly. He smelled of perspiration and pure happiness. Congratulations, my darling. I'm so incredibly proud of you. Would you like to meet him? Of course I would. I entered the recovery room. Victoria was reclining in bed, pale but glowing, cradling the infant in her arms. Beside her, Victoria's mother, Mrs. Christine Northbrook, was stroking the newborn's head with almost religious devotion. Look at this beautiful grandson of mine. Exactly like Victoria when she was born. Those little eyes, that precious nose. Victoria smiled warmly. Mother says he has your mouth, darling, she told Ethan. Nobody mentioned any resemblance to me whatsoever. I approached closer. I extended my arms hopefully. May I hold him? Victoria hesitated. Just briefly, but I noticed. Of course, Mrs. Castellano. Only he's extremely delicate. You must support his head very carefully. As if I didn't know how to cradle an infant. As if I hadn't held Ethan thousands upon thousands of times. I took Samuel in my arms. He was warm, impossibly soft, utterly perfect. He smelled of that distinctive mixture of powder and milk that all newborns possess. I felt a wave of love so overwhelming that my chest physically ached. Hello, my precious one. I'm your grandma Margaret. Mrs. Christine cleared her throat pointedly. Well, actually, we're going to have him call me Grandma Chris and my husband Grandpa Charles so he doesn't get confused with too many names. Isn't that right, Victoria? Victoria nodded quickly. Yes, Mother. That way it's much simpler for the baby. And what about me? I asked, though I already knew the answer. You can be, I don't know, Grandma Maggie or simply Margaret. Whatever you prefer, really. Grandma Maggie. Not even a complete grandmother title, just Maggie, as if my name were too lengthy, too important, too much to accommodate. Certainly. Whatever works best, I said quietly. I returned the baby to Victoria's arms. I departed the room with an excuse about traffic conditions. In the hospital elevator, a nurse recognized me immediately. Mrs. Castellano, what a pleasure seeing you here. Is everything all right? Yes, Lucy. Everything is fine. I just met my grandson. What a tremendous blessing. Congratulations. I smiled, but internally something was festering, rotting away. I decided it didn't matter. That the important thing was simply being present in my grandson's life. So I did what grandmothers do. I purchased baby clothes from the finest boutiques. I ordered an Italian wicker bassinet. I hired a nutritionist to design special nursing menus for Victoria. I sent everything to their condominium. Sometimes with a handwritten note, sometimes with only my name as sender. Ethan would call periodically to thank me. Thanks, Mom. The bassinet is absolutely beautiful. Thanks, Mom. The clothes you sent are exceptional quality. But they never invited me to visit them. It's just that Samuel is still so young, Mom. The pediatrician says he shouldn't have excessive exposure to visitors because of his developing immune system. It's just that we're following a very strict sleep routine, Mom. If someone visits unexpectedly, everything gets disrupted completely. It's just that the condominium is a disaster right now, Mom. Perhaps in a few weeks. Weeks transformed into months. I saw my grandson exclusively in photographs Victoria uploaded to social media. Samuel with Grandma Chris. Samuel with Grandpa Charles. Samuel in the garden of Victoria's parents' estate. I didn't appear in a single photograph. One afternoon I reached my breaking point. I purchased a carrot cake from the bakery Ethan had always loved and appeared at their condominium unannounced. I rang the bell. Victoria opened the door, carrying Samuel in a fabric sling. Mrs. Castellano, we had no idea you were coming. That's precisely why it's called a surprise, dear. I brought cake. I thought we could enjoy coffee together. She hesitated, glancing back into the condominium nervously. It's just that right now Samuel is about to take his scheduled nap. And if he doesn't sleep at this exact time, he becomes completely unmanageable all night long. I can wait while you put him down. I'm not in any hurry whatsoever. Oh, Mrs. Castellano, it's just that afterward I must prepare dinner. And then my mother is coming to assist with the baby's bath. Everything is meticulously timed. Do you understand? I understood perfectly. I understood that I was unwanted. Certainly. May I at least give Samuel a kiss goodbye? She sighed as if I were requesting something impossibly burdensome. All right, but quickly because he gets agitated easily. I approached. Samuel was sleeping peacefully against his mother's chest. I kissed his forehead tenderly. He smelled of lavender and milk. Goodbye, my precious love, I whispered softly. Victoria was already closing the door. Thanks for the cake, Mrs. Castellano. Ethan will definitely call you later. The door shut firmly. I stood there in that hallway smelling of reheated food and cheap air freshener, clutching my purse and my shattered pride. Ethan never called. I began accepting crumbs of affection. A phone call every 2 weeks. A visit every 2 months. A hello mom, we're fine, we love you. That sounded like a memorized script. Richard told me repeatedly I was exaggerating everything. Margaret, Ethan has his own family now. It's entirely normal for him to spend more time with his wife and son. Stop being so emotionally intense. So intense. Me, the woman who had swallowed her voice for 30 years to be the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the invisible woman who supported everything without requesting credit or recognition. I was being too intense. I started attending the hospital more frequently. I participated in board meetings I had previously delegated. I personally reviewed detailed financial statements. I walked through the corridors conversing with doctors and nurses directly. I needed to feel useful. I needed to remember I was someone beyond a rejected grandmother. Dr. Harrison, the medical director, stopped me one afternoon in the administration hallway. Mrs. Castellano, what a genuine pleasure having you here more regularly. Is everything all right? Yes, doctor. I simply needed to keep myself occupied. He observed me with those wise eyes belonging to someone who has witnessed too much human suffering. Sometimes children forget who we truly are. But life has methods of reminding them eventually. I didn't comprehend his meaning at that moment, but I would understand soon enough. On Samuel's 2nd birthday, I received an invitation via text message, a group message impersonal, as if it were a wedding invitation from a distant acquaintance. Samuel's birthday celebration. Sunday, 3 p.m. Sunflower Events Garden. Please confirm attendance. I arrived early, carrying an enormous gift. A bicycle with training wheels I had imported from Germany. $300 plus international shipping costs. The garden was decorated elaborately with blue and white balloons. There was an extensive table laden with food, professional clowns, an inflatable bouncy castle, and at the main table, enormous photographs of Samuel with Grandma Chris, with Grandpa Charles, with Victoria and Ethan. Not a single photograph included me. It was as if I didn't exist in my grandson's life whatsoever. Victoria greeted me with her catalog-perfect smile. Mrs. Castellano, what a pleasure. Look, please sit here with Ethan's aunts. She seated me at a side table, distant from the family, far from the birthday boy. Throughout the entire celebration, I watched as Mrs. Christine carried Samuel everywhere, fed him birthday cake, cleaned his little face. I was only 15 feet away, but I might as well have been in another country entirely. When the time arrived to open gifts, Samuel opened mine last. Look, sweetheart, your Grandma Margaret brought you a bicycle, Victoria said in a sing-song voice. Samuel didn't even glance in my direction. He was 2 years old. He had no idea who I was. To him, I was a stranger who appeared occasionally with expensive gifts. That night in my empty house, I sat on the veranda where I used to drink coffee 25 years earlier. The gardenias didn't smell the same anymore. Or perhaps it was me who had changed fundamentally. I retrieved my phone. I dialed Ethan's number. It rang 5 times before reaching voicemail. I dialed again, voicemail. A third time. Finally, he answered. Mom, what's happening? It's extremely late. It was 9 o'clock at night. I just wanted to know if you arrived home safely. And thank you for inviting me to Samuel's party. Silence. Yes, Mom. Everything is fine. Listen, I'm exhausted. Let's talk tomorrow. Certainly, son. Rest well. He disconnected. I sat there with the phone in my hand and a knot tightening in my throat. I was losing my son completely. And the worst part was that I had allowed it to happen. Smile after smile, silence after silence, accepting crumbs as if they were elaborate banquets. Because a good mother doesn't complain. A good mother doesn't create obstacles. A good mother makes herself infinitesimally small so her children have room to grow. Correct? But that night, observing the stars barely visible through city pollution, I asked myself, at what precise moment did being a good mother come to mean disappearing entirely? I had no answer. Not yet. But I was about to discover it in the most agonizing way imaginable. I still question whether I did the right thing by remaining silent for so long. And you? What would you have done in my position? They say truth always leaves traces, like the breadcrumbs children scatter in fairy tales to find their way home. Only sometimes those breadcrumbs lead us to places we desperately preferred not to discover. It all began with a call from the bank. It was a Tuesday morning. I was in my office at the hospital reviewing quarterly financial reports when my private cell phone rang. The number only my family and financial advisors possessed. Mrs. Castellano? Yes, speaking. This is Benjamin Torres from the Corporate Accounts Department. Please excuse the interruption, but we have a situation requiring your personal authorization. My heart skipped a beat. What kind of situation? Your son, Mr. Ethan Castellano, has requested access to the business credit line you maintain for family emergencies. The amount he's requesting is $500,000. My mouth went completely dry. $500,000? Yes, ma'am. He mentioned it was for an urgent investment opportunity. But since you are the account holder and have left explicit instructions that any withdrawal exceeding $100,000 requires your direct approval, we're calling to confirm. $500,000. May I call him and contact you later? Of course, ma'am. You have until tomorrow to authorize or reject the request. I disconnected. I sat there staring at the phone as if it were a grenade about to detonate. Ethan needed $500,000 and had told me absolutely nothing. I dialed his number immediately. Voicemail. I dialed again. Voicemail. I composed a text message. Son, can we talk? It's important. 3 hours elapsed before he replied. Busy, Mom. What do you need? I need to discuss something regarding the bank. Can you call me? Is it urgent? I'm in a meeting. Yes, it's urgent. All right. I'll call you tonight. The night arrived. 7 o'clock passed. 8, 9. At 10:30 my phone finally rang. Hi, Mom. Sorry, time got completely away from me. What happened? The bank called me. They said you requested $500,000 from the family credit line. Silence. Then his voice uncomfortable. Oh, right. It's for a business investment that presented itself. A tremendously good opportunity. What kind of investment, son? It's complicated to explain over the phone, Mom. But trust me, all right? Something safe and profitable. Victoria's father got me into the business. Restaurants, very lucrative. Victoria's father. And why didn't you consult me before requesting it? Another pause. Because I knew you were going to do exactly this, questions and more questions. Mom, I'm not a child anymore. I know what I'm doing. Ethan, it's $500,000. That's a substantial amount of money. Money that's partially mine too, right? I mean, it's family money. I froze. What do you mean it's yours? Well, someday I'm going to inherit all of that, correct? So technically I'm using what will eventually belong to me. I felt as if I had been physically slapped. Ethan, listen. Mom, I don't have time for this discussion. Are you going to authorize the loan or not? I need more information. I need to see the business plan, the contracts, I cannot believe this. My own mother doesn't trust me. It's not about trust, son. It's about financial responsibility. You know what? Forget it. I'll find another way to get the money. Thanks for nothing. He disconnected. I sat there with the phone in my hand, trembling. My son had just hung up on me over money. The next day, I rejected the loan authorization. Ethan didn't speak to me for 2 weeks. When he finally did, it was via text message. I lost the investment opportunity. Hope you're happy. I wasn't happy. I was devastated. But something else was happening, something I didn't yet understand. A week later, I received a call from my personal accountant, Mr. Gregory Harrington. Mrs. Castellano, I need to inform you of something concerning. We've detected unusual movements in one of the corporate accounts. What kind of movements? Small withdrawals but frequent. 5,000 here, 8,000 there. They total approximately $120,000 in the last 6 months. My stomach turned violently. Who is making those withdrawals? Your husband, attorney Richard Castellano. He has access to that account as a co-holder. Richard. And are those withdrawals for household expenses? They don't match any invoice or registered expense. They appear to be cash withdrawals. $120,000 in cash. Thank you, Mr. Harrington. I'll investigate this immediately. That night, I waited for Richard to arrive home. He entered at 11 o'clock at night, as always, tie loosened, face exhausted. Richard, I need to talk to you now. I'm dead tired, Margaret. It's important. He sighed heavily. He collapsed into the living room armchair. What is it? My accountant informed me that you've withdrawn $120,000 in cash from the corporate accounts. What for? He went pale just for a second, but I saw it clearly. They're office expenses. You know, sometimes clients prefer to pay in cash, and I need to handle those types of transactions. $120,000 in 6 months for office expenses? Margaret, I'm not going to report to you as if you were my supervisor. I'm your husband. And that money came from my inheritance. He stood up from the armchair abruptly, his face transforming. There was something there I had never seen before. Something ugly. Ah, I see. So now it turns out everything is yours. The money is yours. The house is yours. And what am I? Your employee. It's not that, Richard. You know what your problem is, Margaret? You have never known how to be a real wife. Always thinking about business, about money, about control. That's why Ethan is the way he is. What do you mean by that? That you suffocated him so much when he was a child that now he wants to be as far away from you as possible. And I don't blame him whatsoever. The words pierce me like bullets. Richard, I'm going to sleep, and I don't want to continue talking about this. He ascended the stairs. I remained there in the living room where I had raised my son, where I had celebrated Christmases and birthdays, where I had built what I believed was a family. And for the first time I wondered if I truly knew the people living under my roof. The following days were strange. Richard avoided speaking to me beyond what was absolutely necessary. Ethan still didn't call. And I started noticing things. Small things. Like the fact that Richard departed to the office on Saturday afternoons when his law firm was closed. Like his phone was always positioned face down on tables. Like he had started using a different cologne, more expensive, younger. One afternoon, I gathered my courage and searched his jackets. In the inside pocket of his navy blue blazer, I discovered a receipt. Marquis Hotel. Executive Suite. 2 nights. Last week, when he told me he had a lawyers' conference in Seattle, I sat on the floor of our walk-in closet with that receipt in my hands. 30 years of marriage, and it was all a lie. I didn't cry. I had no tears remaining. I called my friend Eleanor, the only person I could trust completely. Eleanor, I need you to do me a favor. Whatever you need, Maggie. I need you to recommend a private investigator. Discreet. Silence on the other end. Oh, friend. Are you certain? Yes. I'll send you the contact immediately. I hired the investigator that same week. I gave him photographs of Richard, his schedule, his car license plates. I want to know where he goes, with whom, everything. Understood, ma'am. In 2 weeks, you'll have a complete report. 2 weeks felt like 2 years. Meanwhile, I attempted to speak with Ethan one more time. I texted him, "Son, can we have lunch together? Just you and me like before." He replied 6 hours later, "This week I'm extremely complicated, Mom. Better next month." Next month. As if I were a dental appointment that could be rescheduled indefinitely. As if I were an annoying obligation. I decided to go to Ethan's condominium without warning one final time. I needed to look him in the eye. I needed to ask him what had happened to us. I rang the bell once, twice. I heard voices inside. Laughter. Victoria opened the door. This time she didn't even pretend kindness. "Mrs. Castellano, Ethan isn't here. What time does he return?" "I don't know. He went out with my father. Business matters." "And Samuel?" "Sleeping. May I go in to see him sleep? Just for a moment." Victoria sighed as if I were requesting a kidney. "Ma'am, with all due respect, I think we need to establish boundaries." My blood froze. Boundaries? Yes. You come over frequently without notice. You call at all hours. Ethan and I feel that, well, that you're being somewhat invasive. Invasive? Me. The mother who paid for everything, who gave everything, who made herself invisible so they could shine. "I understand," I said with a voice I didn't recognize as mine. "I won't bother you again." "Don't get like that, ma'am. It's just that." I said I understand. I turned around. I walked to the elevator. Behind me I heard the door close firmly. I got into my car. I started it. And while I drove down the avenue with the city lights blurring through the tears that finally fell, I understood something. I wasn't losing my son. I had already lost him long ago. Only I had been too cowardly to admit it. 3 days later the detective called me. "Mrs. Castellano, I have the report. Do you prefer I send it, or we meet in person?" "In person." We met at a discreet coffee shop. He handed me a thick manila envelope. "It's not easy. What's inside there, ma'am? Are you certain you want to open it?" "Yes." I opened the envelope. Photographs. Dozens of photographs. Richard entering a hotel. Richard with a woman of about 30. Richard kissing her in a restaurant. Richard with his hand on her waist that I felt nauseous. "Who is she?" "Her name is Diana Sinclair. Legal assistant at your husband's firm. 26 years old, single. She lives in an apartment in a trendy neighborhood that, according to our records, was rented 8 months ago." "By whom?" "By your husband, in the name of a shell company. With my money." Richard was supporting his mistress with my money. I closed the envelope. "Thank you. How much do I owe you?" "It's already paid. $2,000. I gave him the money in cash. I returned to my car and there, sitting in the parking lot of that coffee shop, surrounded by normal people living their normal lives, I felt how everything I knew was crumbling. My husband was cheating on me. My son rejected me. My daughter-in-law hated me. And I had allowed it all, every humiliation, every slight, every lie. Because a good woman doesn't make scenes. A good mother doesn't complain. A good wife trusts. But those rules had only turned me into a fool, into an invisible woman, usable, disposable. I started the car, and while I drove back to my empty house, to my empty life, something inside me began to change. It was small still, a spark barely, but it was there. Rage. Pure crystalline rage. I still didn't know what I was going to do with it. But for the first time in 30 years I felt something besides pain. I felt power. And that, although I didn't know it then, was the beginning of the end, or the true beginning. There are truths that arrive disguised as accidents. Like that Thursday evening when my life transformed forever. It had been exactly 1 week since I discovered Richard's affair. 7 days in which I feigned normalcy while rage and anguish consumed me internally. I arose, dressed, attended the hospital, returned home, ate dinner alone because Richard always had pending work. Now I knew that pending work was 26 years old and named Diana. But I remained silent because I still didn't know what to do. Because a part of me, the cowardly part that had existed 30 years being invisible, was terrified to shatter the little that remained. That evening, I departed the hospital later than usual. I had experienced a complicated meeting with the directors of the oncology department, budgets, innovative treatments, negotiations with pharmaceutical suppliers. It was nearly 7 o'clock when I got into my Mercedes. The streets were slick. It had rained during the afternoon. That fine drizzle that makes everything glisten but also makes surfaces treacherously slippery. I was driving thinking about nothing and everything simultaneously. About Richard. About Ethan. About Victoria. About Samuel, my grandson who didn't know me. About the woman I had become. I didn't see the delivery truck. I only heard the terrible screeching of tires, the violent impact of metal against metal, and then absolute darkness. I regained consciousness on a gurney. Brilliant white lights, hurried voices, pain. Excruciating pain everywhere. "Ma'am, can you hear me? Can you tell me your name?" I attempted to speak, but my mouth wouldn't respond properly. "She has 3 fractured ribs, moderate head trauma, deep laceration on the right arm. We need to operate immediately to repair internal bleeding. It's urgent." More voices, more frantic movement. I felt them transporting me, placing me in an elevator. The ceiling lights pass rapidly over my head. And then I heard something that froze my blood completely. A male voice, professional, speaking on the phone. "Mr. Ethan Castellano?" Silence. "This is Dr. Richard Foster from Memorial Grace Hospital. Your mother, Mrs. Margaret Castellano, has been involved in a severe automobile accident. She's here in the emergency department. We need your authorization for immediate emergency surgery. She has internal bleeding. If we don't operate within the next hour, she may not survive." My heart pounded so forcefully I could hear it in my ears. Silence on the other end of the line. Then my son's voice. Clear as crystal. Cold as winter ice. "Doctor, I'm currently at my wife's mother's birthday celebration. If she dies, just let me know later." The doctor stood motionless. So did I. The nurses surrounding my gurney exchanged horrified looks. "Mr. Castellano, you understand we are discussing life or death?" "I understand perfectly, doctor, but I cannot leave right now. It's my mother-in-law's 70th birthday. You know how these family obligations are. Operate on my mom if necessary. You're the doctor. That's what you're paid for, correct?" Click. He disconnected. The doctor lowered the phone slowly. He stood observing it as if he couldn't believe what he had just heard. One of the nurses, Lucy, who had known me for years, had tears streaming down her face. "That absolute wretch," she murmured under her breath. Dr. Foster approached me. He took my hand gently. "Mrs. Castellano, can you hear me?" I nodded slightly. "We're going to operate on you immediately. We don't need your son's authorization. You are conscious and can authorize your own surgery. Do you agree?" I nodded again. He leaned closer. So close that only I could hear what he said next. "Your son doesn't know who you really are, does he?" I looked him directly in the eyes. And at that moment, with my body shattered and my soul even more broken, I understood something fundamental. I had been living a lie. A lie where I was merely mom, merely wife, merely the woman who gave and gave without requesting anything in return. But I was Margaret Castellano, owner of Memorial Grace Hospital, heir to one of the most substantial medical fortunes in the country. The woman who signed the checks that paid the salary of every person in that hospital, including the doctor who had just heard my son say to inform him if I died, as if it were a pending transaction. "No," I whispered. "He doesn't know." The doctor squeezed my hand firmly. "When you wake up from surgery, we're going to have a very important conversation, Mrs. Castellano, because I think it's time for your family to understand who you are." They transported me to surgery. During the 3 hours I was on that operating table while the surgeons repaired my fractured ribs, my internal bleeding, my shattered body, something else was being repaired. My dignity. My rage was crystallizing into clarity, into determination, into a plan. I woke up in recovery. It was night, 9:47 according to the wall clock. Dr. Foster was sitting beside my bed reading a medical file. When I opened my eyes, he smiled. "Welcome back, Mrs. Castellano. The surgery was a complete success. You're going to be uncomfortable for several weeks, but you're going to recover fully." "Thank you, doctor," I whispered. My throat burned from the intubation tube. "Your husband is in the waiting room. He arrived an hour ago when we notified him you were out of surgery. He asked how you were and said he had to make some calls." "He hasn't returned." "Of course not." "And my son?" The doctor shook his head. "He hasn't called. He hasn't come." I closed my eyes. His mother-in-law's birthday was more important than his mother's life. Dr. Foster, I said, opening my eyes again. How long have you been working at this hospital? 15 years, ma'am. And do you know who I really am? I've known since my first day. Your father, Dr. Castellano, was my mentor. He hired me personally. He told me, Richard, my daughter is going to inherit everything, but she prefers to work from the shadows. Respect that. But never forget who the real authority is. Tears rolled down my cheeks. My father did know who I was. He did see me. Tell me something, doctor. What would you do if someone you love treated you as if you didn't exist? He remained thoughtful. I think I would remind them that I do exist, and that they have a great deal to lose if they forget that. I smiled, although every muscle in my face hurt. I'm going to need some documents, doctor. Tomorrow when I feel better. Whatever you need, Mrs. Castellano. And I'm going to need your absolute discretion. You have it. You always have. That night, Richard finally entered my room. He smelled of expensive cologne, that new cologne he wore to impress Diana. Margaret, what a terrible scare you gave me. How are you feeling? As if he cared. Painful. But I'll survive. Thank God. When the hospital called me, I nearly had a heart attack. I was at a business dinner. I couldn't come sooner. Business dinner at the Marquis Hotel? Certainly. Did you call Ethan? He hesitated. Yes, I sent him a message. He said he would come tomorrow. You know how he is, always busy. Always busy at his mother-in-law's birthday while his mother was dying. Richard, I want you to go home. I need to rest. Are you certain? I can stay. I'm certain. He looked relieved. Well, then I'll see you tomorrow. Rest. He kissed me on the forehead, mechanical, loveless. He departed the room. I remained alone. Alone in my own hospital. In the hospital my father built. In the hospital I had expanded. In the hospital where my son had abandoned me. But I was no longer sad. I was furious. And fury, when channeled by a woman who has kept silent for 30 years, is an unstoppable force. I took my phone. I composed a message to my personal attorney, Helen Mitchell. Helen, I need to see you tomorrow at the hospital. It's urgent. We're going to make some significant changes to my legal documents. She replied within 2 minutes. I'll be there, Margaret, at whatever time you say. Then I dialed Mr. Harrington, my accountant. Mrs. Castellano, how are you? I heard about the accident. I'm going to be fine. I need you to bring me the account statements of all my properties, investments, and businesses tomorrow. Complete documentation. And I need you to prepare documents to terminate Richard's access to all joint accounts. Silence. Are you certain, ma'am? Completely certain. And Harrington, there's something else. I want you to cancel all credit cards that are in Ethan's name. All of them. Also the car that's in my name but that he uses. I want you to initiate the paperwork tomorrow to report it as unauthorized use. Understood, ma'am. Anything else? Yes. I want a complete audit of all the expenses Richard has made in the last 2 years. Every dollar, every cent. I want to know exactly how much of my money he spent on his affair. It will be done, Mrs. Castellano. I disconnected. I turned off the light in my room and for the first time in weeks I slept deeply, because I had finally made a decision. I was no longer going to be the invisible woman. I was no longer going to be the one who gave without receiving. I was no longer going to be the fool who confused love with submission. My son had said, if she dies, let me know later. Well, then the woman he knew had just died on that operating table. The one who woke up was someone completely different. Someone they didn't know, someone who had all the power and who was finally ready to use it. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But this wasn't revenge. It was justice. And justice, I discovered that morning, is served with icy clarity and legal documents. I woke at 6 o'clock. My body ached, but my soul was lighter than it had been in years. The nurses entered to check my vitals, to change the 4, to ask how I felt. Better, I told them. Much better. And it was true. At 8 o'clock, attorney Helen Mitchell arrived. She was carrying a leather briefcase and a serious expression. Margaret, what happened? Your message sounded urgent. I told her everything, every single detail. Ethan's rejection, Richard's affair, the mother-in-law's birthday, the phone call. When I finished, Helen was pale with rage. "That son of a," she murmured. "Sorry, but I just cannot believe it." I couldn't either. But the time for disbelief has passed. Now I need to act. Helen took out her laptop. "Tell me what you need." "First, I want to remove Richard from all my accounts. All of them. So he cannot touch a single dollar of my assets." "Done. Since you are the holder of everything, it's simply a matter of signing some documents and updating with the banks. Second, I want to modify my will. Ethan was the universal heir. I want to change that." Helen looked at me cautiously. "Are you certain?" "He is your only son." "I am completely certain. I'm not going to disinherit him completely. He is still my son. But I'm going to change the terms. I will establish a trust. He will receive a reasonable monthly allowance but nothing more. Control of the hospital, the properties, the investments, that goes elsewhere." "Where?" "To a foundation I'm going to create for women who have been made invisible, who have given everything and received nothing, who need legal, medical, financial support to rebuild their lives." Helen smiled with tears in her eyes. "Your father would be incredibly proud." "I hope so." We worked for 2 hours. I signed documents. I authorized changes. I restructured my entire life with the stroke of my pen. At 10 o'clock, Mr. Harrington arrived with more papers. "Mrs. Castellano, here is everything. The expense report for your husband is quite revealing." He handed me a thick folder. I opened it. $240,000 in 2 years. Hotels, restaurants, jewelry, apartment rent, trips to Cancun, to Cabo, to Miami. All with my money. All while telling me he was working. I felt nauseous. And the other matter? Ethan's cards are canceled as of 7 this morning. The car has been reported. Legally, if he uses it, it's vehicle theft. The blocking procedures are complete. Perfect. Harrington hesitated. "Ma'am, are you certain about this? Your son is going to..." "Is going to what, Harrington? Is going to stop talking to me? He already doesn't talk to me. Is going to distance himself? He is already distant. Is going to think I'm a bad mother?" He preferred his mother-in-law's birthday to his mother's life. He already thinks the worst of me. He stayed silent. "I have nothing left to lose," I continued. "But I do have a great deal to recover, starting with my dignity." At 11 o'clock, Richard arrived. He brought flowers, a bouquet of white roses he probably purchased at the corner stand. "Good morning, darling. How did you wake up?" "Fine. Sit down, Richard. We need to talk." He sat in the chair beside my bed. He placed the flowers on the table. I took out the folder Harrington had given me. "What is this?" he asked. "It is a report of all the expenses you have made with my money in the last 2 years. $240,000, Richard. On your mistress." He went white as paper. "Margaret, don't speak. Just listen." I opened the folder. I took out the photographs the detective had given me. I placed them on the bedsheet one by one. Richard at the hotel. Richard kissing Diana. Richard with his hand on her waist. Richard entering the apartment he rented. "Margaret, please let me explain." "Explain what? That you've been cheating on me with your assistant? That you paid for an apartment with my inheritance? That while I thought you were working, you were with her?" He covered his face with his hands. "It was a mistake. Terrible mistake. But I love you, Margaret. You are my wife." I laughed. A bitter laugh that hurt my broken ribs. "You love me, Richard? You haven't loved me for years. For years I have been invisible to you. I was only useful to pay your bills, to maintain your standard of living, to be the decorative wife who organized your business dinners." "That's not true." "Yes, it is true. And you know what? I don't care anymore. Because starting today, everything changes." "What do you mean?" "I mean I removed you from all my accounts. That you no longer have access to my money. That Diana's apartment, the one you pay for with my inheritance, is finished. That your corporate card is canceled. That your life of luxury sustained by my wealth is over." He stood up from the chair. "You cannot do this. I am your husband. I have rights." "Rights? You signed a prenuptial agreement 30 years ago, remember? At your insistence, because you didn't want people to think you were marrying for money. In that agreement, everything I inherited remains mine. You have no right to anything. Margaret, please. We can go to therapy. We can fix this. There is nothing to fix. I want a divorce, Richard. Silence. He collapsed into the chair again. Divorce. Yes. My lawyer is already preparing the papers. You can stay in the house until you find somewhere to live. I give you 1 month. After that, if you are still there, I will remove you legally. You cannot do this. 30 years of marriage. 30 years in which I was invisible. 30 years in which my only value was my bank account. It is over. He stood, walked to the door, stopped. You are going to end up alone, Margaret. Completely alone. I am already alone, Richard. The difference is that now I accept it. He left. The door closed behind him and I breathed. For the first time in 30 years I breathed completely. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon my phone rang. Ethan. I answered. Mom. His voice sounded hysterical. What did you do? My cards aren't working. I tried to withdraw money from the ATM, and it says the account is canceled. I went to use the car and a police officer stopped me saying the vehicle is reported as unauthorized. What is happening? What is happening, Ethan, is that I canceled everything. What? Why? Because yesterday I had an accident. A serious accident. The doctor called to tell you they needed to operate on me urgently or I could die. Do you remember what you told him? Silence. I don't know what you're talking about. You told him, I'm at my mother-in-law's birthday. If she dies, let me know later. More silence. Mom, I don't remember saying that. I was busy. There were many people. Too busy to know if your mother lived or died. Mom, don't be dramatic. You're okay, right? You're alive. Yes, Ethan. I am alive. And now I am going to live for real. Without supporting people who don't value me. What are you talking about? I am talking about how for 25 years I gave you everything. Everything you asked for and much you didn't ask for. Your expensive education, your trips, your wedding, your condominium, your car, your entire life, I paid for it. Dad did too. No, Dad didn't. Everything came from my inheritance. From the hospital my father left me. From the investments I multiplied. I paid every dollar you have spent in your life. Absolute silence. I didn't know that. Because you never asked. Because you assumed. Because it was convenient for you not to know. That way, you could keep thinking everything came from your father's effort and that I was just mom. The mom who is in the way. The invasive mom. The mom who is extra. Mom, I never said. Victoria said it and you allowed it. But do you know what is worst, Ethan? It is not that you rejected me. It is that you did not even care to know if I was alive or dead. I heard his ragged breathing. So what, you're going to punish me by taking away the money? It is not punishment. It is consequence. You are a 32-year-old adult man. It is time you support yourself. I have a son, Mom. I have responsibilities. And I also had responsibilities when I raised you alone while managing an empire. Somehow I managed. I am certain you can too. This is unbelievable. My own mother. Your own mother loved you more than you loved her. And she got tired. I disconnected. My hands were trembling, but not from fear, from liberation. 10 minutes later, Victoria called me. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Mrs. Castellano, I don't know what Ethan told you, but you cannot do this. We were counting on that money on the car. Samuel has expenses. How do you expect us to live? I deleted the message without finishing listening to it. That night, alone in my hospital room, I received a message from an unknown number. Mrs. Castellano, I am Diana Sinclair. Richard told me that you discovered us. I just want you to know that I love him for real. It was not for money. I replied. Good, because the money ran out. Now you can love him for who he really is. A 62-year-old man without a dollar in his pocket. Good luck. I blocked the number. The following days were strange. Richard did not return to the hospital. He sent his secretary to collect his belongings from the house. Ethan called me 3 more times. I didn't answer any. Victoria sent me messages. I ignored them all. Dr. Foster came to see me twice daily. How do you feel, Mrs. Castellano? Sore but better every day. I mean, how do you feel here? He said, pointing to his chest. Light, I replied. For the first time in years, I feel light. He smiled. Your father would be very proud of you. I hope so. A week later, they discharged me. I arrived at my house, that enormous house in Highland Estates that had been my golden prison. Richard was no longer there. He had left a note on the dining room table. Margaret, I made mistakes, but this is too cruel. I never thought you would be capable of destroying a family like this. Hope you are happy alone. Destroying a family? No, I didn't destroy anything. They destroyed it. I just stopped supporting the ruins. I sat on the back veranda, in that place where I used to drink coffee 25 years ago. The gardenias were still there, a little neglected, but there. I breathed deep. The air smelled of recent rain and wet earth. And for the first time in decades, I felt at peace, because I had learned something fundamental. Love is not enough if it flows in only one direction. Family is not sacred if it makes you invisible. And sometimes losing everything is the only way to find yourself. My son had abandoned me when I needed him most. My husband had betrayed me for years. But I was still here. Margaret Castellano, owner of my own life. Finally, there are silences more eloquent than 1,000 words. The first days alone in that house were the quietest of my life, and the most revealing. Without Richard arriving late with his excuses. Without Ethan ignoring my calls. Without the constant noise of pretending everything was fine. Just me and the truth. 3 months had passed since my accident. 3 months since my life changed completely. The foundation was working better than expected. We had already helped 37 women. Divorces, custody battles, domestic violence, financial fraud. Each case reminded me why this was important. Each woman leaving my office with her head held high was a piece of me healing. The hospital was thriving. We had inaugurated a new pediatrics wing. The doctors greeted me with genuine respect. I was no longer the invisible owner. I was the visible leader. And I was learning to be happy alone. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I received the first sign. I was in a meeting with the finance team when my phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. Mrs. Castellano, this is Christine Northbrook, Victoria's mother. I need to speak with you urgently. It is about Ethan and my daughter. Please call me. I looked at the message for a long time. Victoria's mother. The woman who had displaced my place as a grandmother. The one who had facilitated my erasure from Samuel's life. A part of me wanted to ignore it, but curiosity won. I finished the meeting and dialed the number. Mrs. Castellano? Mrs. Northbrook. What do you need? I heard a sigh on the other end, tired, defeated. I need to speak with you in person. It is complicated. I'm busy, Mrs. Northbrook. If you have something to say, you can do it over the phone. Please, just 1 hour of your time. I beg you. There was something in her voice. Something broken. All right. Tomorrow at 3 at the European Cafe in Highland Park. I will be there. Thank you. The next day I arrived on time. Mrs. Christine was already there, sitting at a table in the back. She looked different, thinner, older, as if she had aged years and months. I sat across from her. What is happening, Mrs. Northbrook? She ordered coffee. I did too. We waited in uncomfortable silence until the waiter left. I don't know how to say this, she began. So I am going to be direct. Ethan and Victoria are divorcing. I felt as if I had been punched in the stomach. What? Yes. Ethan asked her for a divorce 2 weeks ago. They are already living apart. Why? Mrs. Christine lowered her gaze. Because Ethan blames Victoria for everything that happened with you. He says she manipulated him. That she distanced him from his mother. That she turned him into the man he became. I didn't know what to feel. Sadness, satisfaction, rage. And Victoria says it is unfair. That she only wanted the best for her family. That if Ethan has no job or money, it is your fault, not hers. Of course. And Samuel? Mrs. Christine's voice broke. Samuel is confused. He asks for his dad constantly, and now he asks for you too. My heart skipped a beat. For me? Yes. Victoria told him you were sick and that is why you were not coming to visit him. But the boy found some old photos of when you held him as a baby. And he asks, where is Grandma Margaret? I closed my eyes. My grandson. My grandson who didn't know me was looking for me. And what do you want from me, Mrs. Northbrook? I want to ask for your forgiveness. I opened my eyes sharply. Forgiveness. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Yes. Sorry for having allowed my daughter to treat you like that. Sorry for having displaced you. I thought I was helping Victoria. I thought I was being a good mother supporting her. But I realized something. By helping my daughter erase her mother-in-law, I taught my grandson that grandmothers are disposable. And now that I am seeing how Ethan discards Victoria the same way they discarded you, I understand the damage we did. I didn't expect this. I didn't expect her pain, her repentance. Mrs. Northbrook. Let me finish, please. Ethan is destroyed financially. He lost his job at his father's firm because Richard closed the firm. Apparently, his father is also bankrupt. That girl, Diana, left him when the money ran out. Now Ethan lives in a small apartment in a modest neighborhood. He works as a manager at a convenience store. He earns less than $1,000 a month. I felt a strange mix of compassion and justice. And yet he asked Victoria for a divorce. Yes, because he says every time he looks at her, he sees his own mistakes. He sees how he treated you, and he cannot stand it. And Victoria? Victoria is furious. She says all this is your revenge, that you plan to destroy her marriage, that you are a cruel woman who could not stand seeing her son happy. I laughed without humor. I did not destroy anything. I just stopped holding it up, and they fell on their own. I know that now. But Valerie does not see it that way. She is talking about suing him for exaggerated alimony. She wants to leave him in ruin. And what do you want me to do? Mrs. Christine looked me in the eye. Nothing. I just wanted you to know that you were right. That what you did, although it hurt us all, was necessary. And I wanted to ask for your forgiveness, for real from the heart. There was sincerity in her eyes. Genuine pain. Do you know what is the saddest thing about all this, Mrs. Northbrook? That I did not want to be right. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted my son to show me that he loved me beyond the money. I wanted Victoria to turn out to be a good woman who was only protecting her family. I wanted to be paranoid and exaggerating. But I wasn't. No, you weren't. We finished the coffee in silence. Before leaving, Mrs. Christine took something out of her bag. A photo. Samuel made this in kindergarten. It is a drawing of his family. Look at it. I took the photo. In the drawing there were 4 people. One that said Dad, one that said Mom, a small one that said me, and a figure in the corner bigger with a heart on the chest. Above it said with crooked letters, Grandma Margaret. I broke. The tears I had held back for months finally came. He remembers you, whispered Mrs. Christine. I do not know how. He only saw you a few times. But he remembers you. Tell him, my voice broke. Tell him Grandma Margaret loves him. Always has loved him. I will tell him. Mrs. Christine stood up. Before leaving, she put her hand on mine. If one day you can forgive us, we would be very grateful. But if you cannot, we would understand. She left. I sat there with Samuel's drawing in my hands, crying silently. 6 months had passed since that letter from Ethan. 6 months in which I had not responded, in which I had lived with myself, in which I had learned to breathe without the weight of resentment. I was sitting on my veranda, in this place where it all began so many years ago. The gardenias were in full bloom. The coffee steamed in my white porcelain cup, the same cup I used when Ethan was a child. I was 60 years old now, and finally I felt complete. The foundation had helped 189 women. The hospital had opened 2 new wings, pediatric oncology and a mental health center. My father would be proud. And me, I learned to be alone without feeling empty. But today was different. Today Samuel turned 4. And this morning at 7, I received a message from a number I hadn't blocked because it was new. Mrs. Castellano, this is Ethan. I know I do not deserve to ask you this, but Samuel turns 4 today. He's having a small party in a park. Just him, me, and 2 classmates from preschool. Nothing fancy, just cake and games. Samuel would love for his Grandma Margaret to be there. If you decide to come, the party is at 4 at Central Park. I will understand if you do not come. But I needed to try. I read the message 20 times. What did I want to do? Was going to that party for Ethan or for Samuel? It was for Samuel. That boy was not to blame for what happened, and he deserved to meet the extraordinary woman his grandmother was. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon I got ready. Nothing ostentatious. A simple ivory dress, comfortable shoes, hair up. I bought a gift. A set of illustrated books, tales of animals and adventures. I wrapped it myself with blue paper and a silver bow. I drove toward the park with my heart in my throat. I arrived at 4:10, late on purpose to assess the situation before committing. I saw them from afar. Ethan was next to a picnic table with a paper tablecloth. There was a small cake, balloons, 3 children running around, and Samuel, my grandson, bigger than I remembered. Dark hair, bright eyes, contagious laughter. I approached slowly. Ethan saw me first. He stood motionless, as if he could not believe I was there. "Mom," he whispered. "Hello, Ethan." We looked at each other. There was so much to say, so much to heal, but it was not the time. "Thanks for coming," he said with a broken voice. "I came for Samuel." "I know. And it is enough." He turned toward the children. "Samuel, come here, son. Someone wants to meet you." The boy ran toward us. He had chocolate on his face and a huge smile. "Who is it, Dad?" Ethan knelt next to him. "Remember that drawing you made of Grandma Margaret?" Samuel's eyes lit up. "Yes. She is your Grandma Margaret." Samuel looked at me without fear, without strangeness, with pure curiosity. "For real?" I knelt too, ignoring the pain in my knees. "For real, my precious one. Happy birthday." I handed him the gift. He took it with small hands. He opened it with typical 4-year-old excitement. "Books. I love books." "Yes. My dad reads to me every night. Would you read to me too?" My heart broke and put itself back together at the same time. "I would love to read to you, my love." Samuel hugged me. Just like that, without really knowing me, without history between us, just with that capacity children have to love without conditions. I hugged him back. He smelled of baby shampoo and cake. "I missed you, Grandma," he whispered against my shoulder. "I missed you too, my heaven." We spent the afternoon together. We played, ate cake, sang happy birthday. Ethan kept to the sidelines, respectful, silent. Every now and then our looks crossed. There was regret in his eyes, but also hope. When the party ended, Samuel took my hand. "Are you coming to my house, Grandma? I have lots of toys to show you." I looked at Ethan. He nodded slightly. "I live near here in a small apartment. It is not fancy, but it is my home. I would like to see it." We walked together, Sammy in the middle holding our hands. The apartment was exactly as he had described, small, maybe 400 square feet. Clean but modest, basic furniture, white walls. But there was something there that was never in the house in Highland Park. Warmth. There were drawings of Samuel on the refrigerator, photos of the two of them on the wall, books stacked next to the sofa. "It is not much," said Ethan, "but it is honest. Everything you see here, I paid for with my work." "It is beautiful," I said, and I meant it. Samuel dragged me to his room. A small room with a single bed, toys organized in boxes, and more drawings on the walls. "Look, Grandma, this is you." He pointed to a drawing on the wall. A woman with a big smile and a heart on her chest. "It's beautiful, my love. I drew it because Dad told me you were the best grandma in the world." I looked at Ethan, who was standing in the doorway. His eyes were wet. "He's right," I whispered. Samuel yawned. "It was almost 7. "Time for bed, champion," said Ethan. "But I want Grandma to read me a story." "If Grandma wants to." "I would love to." We settled Samuel into bed. He chose one of the books I had given him. A story about a brave little fox looking for his way home. I read slowly, savoring each word, each illustration. Halfway through, Samuel snuggled against me. "Grandma." "Yes, my love. Will you come back tomorrow?" My heart squeezed. "Would you like me to?" "Yes. Every day." "We'll see, precious. But I promise to come back soon." He fell asleep before I finished the story. I carefully placed the book on the nightstand and covered him with his blanket. Ethan and I left the room in silence. In the small living room we finally faced each other, really faced each other, for the first time in almost a year. "Coffee," he offered. "Please." His eyes widened. "What?" "I'm proud of who you're becoming. Not who you were, who you're becoming." Takes courage to admit you were wrong. It takes strength to start over from nothing. Tears rolled down his cheeks. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Maybe not. But I'm giving it to you anyway. Not for you, for me. Because I'm tired of carrying anger. Because life is too short to waste on resentment. Mom. But, I interrupted. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Doesn't mean going back to how things were. Trust is earned, Ethan. And that will take time. I understand. I'll wait as long as it takes. We sat in silence sipping our coffee. What about Dad? Ethan finally asked. What about him? Have you heard from him? Richard filed for divorce officially 2 months ago. Apparently, he and Diana are living together in a rental in the suburbs. He's working as a consultant for a small firm. From what I hear, Diana is already complaining about the lifestyle downgrade. Ethan laughed bitterly. They deserve each other. Maybe, but that's not my concern anymore. I signed the divorce papers. It should be final next month. Are you okay with that? More than okay. I'm free. We talked for another hour. About the foundation, the hospital, his plans, Samuel's progress in preschool. It was the first real conversation we'd had in years. Maybe ever. When I finally stood to leave, Ethan walked me to my car. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think someday we could have a relationship again? A real one? I thought about it carefully. I don't know, Ethan. I honestly don't know. But I'm willing to try. For Samuel. And maybe eventually for us. That's all I can ask for. He hugged me. I let him. It wasn't the warm, safe hug of my childhood memories. But it was a start. Can I call you sometimes? To let you know how Samuel is. Yes. And you can bring him to visit. I have a big backyard, perfect for a 4-year-old. His face lit up. Really? Really? Every Sunday if you want. We can make it a tradition. He would love that. I got in my car. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. Ethan was standing there waving, and for the first time in a very long time, I saw the boy I had raised, not the man Richard had molded. 6 months later, Sunday dinners had become sacred. Every week, Ethan and Samuel came to my house. We cooked together, played in the garden, read stories. Samuel called me every few days just to tell me about his day. Slowly, carefully, my son and I were rebuilding something. Not what we had, that was gone forever. But something new. Something honest. Richard's divorce was finalized. He married Diana 3 weeks later. A small ceremony, no guests. I heard through mutual acquaintances that they were already fighting about money. The foundation expanded. We opened a second office in Dallas. 247 women helped and counting. And me? I was learning something my father always knew, that the strongest steel is forged in the hottest fire. I was 60 years old, divorced, starting over. And I had never been happier. One Sunday, as Samuel chased butterflies in the garden and Ethan helped me clear the table, my son spoke quietly. Mom, I need to tell you something. What is it? I've been in therapy. For 6 months now. I stopped, surprised. Therapy? Yes. To work through everything, how I was raised, the values I learned, how I treated you. My therapist says I have a lot of unlearning to do. That's very mature of you. I'm trying. And there's something else. He paused. I wrote Dad a letter, telling him I don't want contact with him until he takes responsibility for his actions. Not just to me, to you. Ethan. I know you don't need me to fight your battles. But I needed to do it. For me. So Samuel knows that standing up for what's right matters, even when it's hard. I touched his face. This man who looked like his father but was finally becoming his own person. Your grandfather would be very proud of you. I hope so. I'm trying to be the man he was. The man you deserved. We stood there, mother and son, in the garden where it all began, where I had made the hardest decision of my life. And I knew I had done the right thing. Sometimes love means letting go. Sometimes it means fighting. And sometimes it means standing still while everything falls apart, trusting that what's meant to survive will rebuild itself stronger. I lost a husband who never truly loved me. I lost a son who had to lose everything to find himself. But I found myself. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all.